All right, good evening again to you. If you have your Bibles, let's go to the book of Exodus, chapter 39. We are getting real close to the end of the book of Exodus. Extremely close, actually. Just another week, I believe it is. And we'll have gone all the way through this great book with so much exciting detail and narratives, and all, of course, starting with the plagues. And y'all remember way back in the distant past when we were talking about, the route that they took through the wilderness and maybe which Pharaoh was in charge of Egypt at the time and all. That seems like an eternity ago, but here we are nearing the end here of this book. And as we continue on in these last few chapters, the fruition of the building of the tabernacle and the furniture therein and the other elements for their worship. This is, in so many ways, this will be kind of the last chapter that describes these things in this detail. So I know it's been 5 or 6 weeks now that we've been back in this mode after hearing these similar things in chapters 24 through 6, I think it was. But tonight we'll revisit the priestly garments, and you'll see here again a good image here, not too exact specifications, but close, so we know what it's looking like. I know most of us, when we read Exodus 39, we'll need a visual aid, and this is a good visual aid for us tonight. This is the high priest and his garments. Okay, let's begin reading in chapter 39. And verse 1. It says, "From the blue and purple and scarlet yarns, they made finely woven garments for ministering in the holy place. They made the holy garments for Aaron as the Lord had commanded Moses." Remember, the Lord commanded Moses those things back in, I think, chapter 26, for this specifically. Verse 2. "He made the ephod of gold, blue, and purple, and scarlet yarns, and fine twined linen. And they hammered out gold leaf, and he cut it into threads to work into the blue and purple, and the scarlet yarns, and into the fine twined linen in skilled design. They made for the ephod attaching shoulder pieces, joined to it at its two edges. And the skillfully woven band on it was of one piece with it, and made like it of gold, blue, and purple, and scarlet yarns, and fine twined linen, as the Lord had commanded Moses." Now let's pause here. We hear about these yarns again, and it's such everything else that we've read about the tabernacle in the book of Exodus. It's those same colors, isn't it? Gold, blue, purple, and scarlet. So that red. So if you remember the picture of the tabernacle itself, we showed several weeks ago with the different layers of the curtains that covered the structure. The priest, a lot of his garment is made out of not just the same color, but the same material as well. Okay? And something here to notice in verse 3, "And they hammered out gold leaf." Okay? And then it says, "And he cut it into threads." Now that he, remember way back, we had those super skilled artisans, those craftsmen. We had Bezalel and Oholiab. This is Bezalel, okay? He's the one that cut it into threads. They would hammer out gold so thin that they could weave it into this yarn, okay? Old history books and archaeology and different things that have been passed down through the years have shown that people, even in this time, we think sometimes that we're so advanced compared to the people that lived this many thousands of years ago. But the truth is, they did some really amazing things, didn't they? Some of the things that they built, which you might even think about the pyramids and other things of that nature. But when they would hammer out this gold leaf, even 3,500 years ago, they could hammer it out to as thin as 1/1000th of an inch. They could hammer it out so thin that they could weave it in with this yarn. Okay, so that's one of the things. Not only did Bezalel cut the wood and do the gold to cover the Ark of the Covenant and the other things, but also for this gold leaf. Yes, sir?
In conjunction with that, the astronauts that flew those shields
Mm-hmm.
They were looking through gold.
That's right. I hadn't thought about that. That's exactly right. They can hammer that stuff out smooth. One of the things about gold is, when you get, now I'm no metal expert by any means, but you talk about how malleable it is, how soft it is, how easy it is to manipulate it or to beat it with a hammer. Gold is easy. Gold is really a softer metal. So they could cut it, hammer down thin, cut it, and incorporate it in this yarn, okay, into the threads. All right, so they made the ephod attaching shoulder pieces. You see there at the top left where ephod shoulder straps, okay? We'll talk about all these things that are going here. There's the ephod itself is kind of that outer covering. All right, let's keep going. Verse 6, they made the onyx stones enclosed in settings of gold filigree and engraved like the engravings of a signet, according to the names of the sons of Israel. And he set them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod to be the stones of remembrance for the sons of Israel, as the Lord had commanded Moses. Okay, now let's see. Are the onyx pieces up there? It's going to be on the shoulder. Okay, stones of memorial. Y'all see that on the left? Okay, the ESV here says stones of remembrance. The stones on each shoulder, they had the names of the sons of Israel, half on one, half on the other. And we read that word there in verse 6. Somebody may know this better than me. I had to look it up. Filigree. All right, anybody know what filigree is? Okay. It's really and I'm going to butcher the definition here. It's similar to what we talked about with that gold a minute ago, real thin, and you could thread it and make it into yarn-like stuff to be woven. Filigree is just a thin woven yarn, basically. Okay, now, is that the technical definition? Maybe not, but I had to look it up because I didn't know what that was off the top of my head. So you think about these onyx stones on each shoulder. The sons of Israel, of course, we know the sons of Israel also, by name, the tribes of Israel, set them on the shoulder pieces. Okay, now here where it gets just really fantastic. Verse 8, he made the breastpiece, so let's pause right there. You see on the right where it says breastplate of judgment. That's what we're talking about, and you may not be able to see it, but remember, there are 12 stones on that breastplate. Okay? What could what on earth could those 12 stones represent? Well, let's go again to the sons of Israel, the tribes of Israel. Okay? So you'll see there's 3 columns and 4 rows. Okay? So we have 12 stones. So verse 8, he made the breastpiece in skilled work. Now who's he? That's Bezalel again. In the style of the ephod of gold, blue, and purple, and scarlet yarns, and fine twined linen. It was square. They made the breastpiece doubled, a span its length. Okay, we've been doing cubits. Here's a span. A span is an average man's thumb to pinky. Okay, it's about 9 inches. Okay, so when the Bible talks about in the book of Isaiah, in the span of God's hand, he can see the universe. Okay, that kind of just gives you the picture of how large God is in so many ways. So a span was its length. All right, so let's pick up right there. They made the breastpiece double. They span its length and they span its breadth when doubled. And they set in it 4 rows of stones. A row of sardius, topaz, and carbuncle was the first row. And the second row, an emerald, a sapphire, and a diamond. And the third row, jacinth, and I looked this up, agate is how you say that, I believe. And then amethyst. And the fourth row, a beryl, an onyx, and a jasper. They were enclosed in settings of gold filigree. So there's that word again, filigree. On that first row, y'all look if y'all have a different version than my ESV here. On the first row in verse 10, sardis, topaz, and carbuncle. Does anybody say anything different than those 3?
Topaz and emerald.
Say the first one again, Archie.
Ruby.
Ruby.
Topaz and emerald.
Okay, now those we're probably more familiar with than emerald, more so than carbuncle. Okay. Anybody have anything different on those? Josiah, is that what you're saying?
I have it the same, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Carnelian, crystallite,
Okay? These are some of these things I'm not real familiar with. But certainly, Archie, what version do you have right there? New American Standard. Okay, NASB. Yeah, those are probably our more common terms for those gems. So the second row, mine says emerald, sapphire, and diamond. Archie, what does yours say on the second row?
Turquoise, sapphire, and a diamond.
Okay, turquoise, sapphire, and a diamond. Okay, third row. What does yours say, Archie, on that third row?
Jason, agate,
Mm-hmm.
emerald.
Okay, just exactly what I had. And the fourth row.
Pearl, onyx, jasper.
Okay, so they are the exact same on those. Some of these I don't know. Okay, I'm not an expert in gems. Or in metal. I'm not an expert in gemstones either. But for sure, when the high priest would walk in wearing this outfit, was there any question in all the couple million people out there in the middle of nowhere, was there any question who the high priest was when he came rolling in wearing this outfit? Okay? Nobody else is dressed like this. All right? We had when I was in Clovis, I wore very similar type clothes that I wear here. Most Sunday mornings I'd wear a sport coat with jeans and boots. And one of the guys at church, a good guy, after a while, he started wearing a sport coat and jeans and boots every Sunday. And everybody gave him the hardest time, and he wasn't trying to copy me. He just, he's not from Texas. He didn't know that was a good look, and he saw it, and he said, hey, that's what I'm going to do too, type situation. He wasn't trying to be like me by any means, but the high priest, nobody's dressed like this. And you can imagine, in all the things that we've read in Exodus, what would have been the punishment had somebody other than the high priest try to dress like this. They're not making it. Okay? We've even seen in the Old Testament, in the future, beyond this point, people try to do the high priestly duties, not dressed right. Okay? And guess what? They didn't make it. All right? So remember, we keep going back to the golden calf, but it was such a switch in the willingness to obey for the Israelites. Remember, they made the golden calf and they said, hey, this golden calf, this is the God that brought us out of Egypt. Then Moses comes down the mountain and he breaks those tablets and chaos ensues. 3,000 people or so die. Moses melts down the golden calf, makes them drink the remnants of the golden calf and all of that stuff. Now God through Moses has their attention. So when this Bezalel's making the Ark of the Covenant and all these other things, and now his role and others that are making this priestly garment, man, they're right on point, aren't they? They're doing it just right. And we'll read that here at the end of the chapter, but something else we'll point out about this priestly garment. In so many other cultures, and even today, if you walk, not as prominent here in our part of the world, but if you go to a big city where there are more Catholic churches or more churches that we would consider high church, where the priests wear priestly garments, the Roman collar or whatever else they may wear, a lot of times that's what they wear all day, every day. Okay, that is their outfit, that is their uniform. And even in these times, the Egyptian priests, of course they weren't priests for the one true God, obviously, but they would always wear those priestly garments. But this thing right here, Aaron's not walking around wearing this every day. Okay, one day a year, Day of Atonement, he'd put this on. Okay, it was when we got married almost 17 years ago. My brother was my best man, and as you know, my brother was in the Marine Corps, and I had to pretty much beg my brother to wear his dress blues to our wedding. He just didn't want to be the, center of attention and all that type of stuff. Because, I was wearing a tux, but the dress blues looked better with the medals and the ribbons and all that looked better than what I had on and all that. He just didn't want to wear it. I made him wear it. And I told him, I said, if I had earned that, I would wear that every day. Okay, everywhere I went, as sharp as it looks, right? This high priest, one time. Aaron, one time. So that goes back into that idea of, that we've mentioned several times, when the high priest would enter into the Holy of Holies, think about that man, of course Aaron first, but after Aaron, think about that man doing that for the first time ever. Think about putting this on for the first time ever, to go into the Holy of Holies where you've never been before. And there's nobody left alive on earth that's ever been, because how did they succeed each other? What was the line of high priest? The other guy had to die. Okay, they didn't have 4-year term limits or 6-year term limits. This is a very intimidating thing. One day a year, this guy would put this on with all these fantastic stones. Let's keep going. Verse 14. There were 12 stones. You see that with the 3 columns and 4 rows. There were 12 stones with their names according to the names of the sons of Israel. They were like signets, each engraved with its name for the 12 tribes. And they made on the breastpiece twisted chains like cords of pure gold. And they made 2 settings of gold filigree and 2 gold rings, and put the 2 rings on the 2 edges of the breastpiece. And they put the 2 cords of gold and the 2 rings at the edges of the breastpiece. They attached the 2 ends of the 2 cords to the 2 settings of filigree. Thus they attached it in front of the shoulder pieces, in front to the shoulder pieces of the ephod. Then they made 2 rings of gold and put them at the 2 ends of the breastpiece on its inside edge next to the ephod. They made 2 rings of gold and attached them in front of the lower part of the 2 shoulder pieces of the ephod at its seam above the skillfully woven band of the ephod. And they bound the breastpiece by its rings to the rings of the ephod with a lace of blue, so that it should lie on the skillfully woven band of the ephod, and that the breastpiece should not come loose from the ephod, as the Lord had commanded Moses. All right, so again, that phrase there is the Lord had commanded Moses. You know, we talked about it, the golden calf. When Moses says, hey, here's what the Lord says, you better believe Bezalel and these others are saying, you know what? All right, that's exactly how we're going to do it at this point. Okay, so let's see. You can't really see very well the other details that it's talking here, the cords of gold and all of those things. Again, I would encourage you to do a little research. If you have a biblical encyclopedia, of course, certainly you could go to Google and just look at these garments. There's different iterations of it, different ideas of what they look like. They're all similar to this, but obviously we don't, nobody alive, even close, has seen this with their own eyes. So this is just a good example of what we have here.
You're going to have to work out, because that's going to be a heavy duty.
That is going to, that's exactly right. It would be weighty thing to wear, that's for sure. Yeah, it would, I was reading a commentary about that actually. I don't remember if it said an estimate of how much it weighed, but they did say, they talked about how bright and colorful it was, obviously, which you can see just in this image, but also that it allowed for good movement, that the priest could move, which, you know, he's not playing defense in basketball or anything, but what he is doing is, you know, talking about sacrifices and things like that. I mean, he is being active in this. But yeah, it's a good point that it would be heavy. All right. He also, I'm sorry?
By the rope was there.
That's right. Yes, exactly. Right. Yeah. If he fell out inside the Holy of Holies, he had a rope attached to him so they could drag him out. Because if somebody went in there to get him, they're not supposed to be in there either. All right, it would just be a cartoonish. Okay, it'd just be piling up in there. Okay, that's exactly right. All right, verse 22. He also made the robe of the ephod woven all of blue. You can see this right here. All right, see the robe of ephod kind of there at the bottom, the wording on the left. And the opening of the robe in it was like the opening in a garment, with a binding around the opening, so that it might not tear. On the hem of the robe, they made pomegranates of blue and purple and scarlet yarns and fine twined linen. They also made bells of pure gold and put the bells between the pomegranates all around the hem of the robe between the pomegranates. a bell and a pomegranate, around the hem for ministering as the Lord had commanded Moses. Okay, so he's going to be making a little noise too as he's walking here. Okay, with these bells around the hem of the garment. Okay, verse 27. They also made the coats woven of fine linen for Aaron and his sons, and the turban of fine linen, and the caps of fine linen, and the linen undergarments of fine twined linen, and the sash of fine twined linen, and of blue and purple and scarlet yarns, embroidered with needlework as the Lord had commanded Moses. Okay, talks about the turban here. Got that there at the top. Of course, you have a pretty good idea already what a turban looks like, I'm sure. Verse 30. They made the plate of the holy crown of pure gold and wrote on it an inscription like the engraving of a signet. Here's the inscription. It says, Holy to the Lord. And they tied to it a cord of blue to fasten it on the turban above, as the Lord had commanded Moses. All right, you see that several times now. That was at the third or fourth time in the chapter. All these things were done just how God had commanded Moses. Remember Bezalel, Oholiab, and the others that were making all of these things. The Bible talks about how, yes, they were skilled, but on top of that, the Bible talks about how the God gave them the Spirit to do these works. And I just take that to mean, and I may be off on this, but my personal interpretation is that there was just almost a miraculous ability for them to make these things just perfect. Okay? Skilled, yes, but God said this is how it needs to go. Some of these things may have been above and beyond the normal skill set of a guy wandering around the wilderness. Okay? I think God gave them what they needed. He called these people for these specific tasks, and He gave them the ability to perform these tasks. So now that the priestly garments have been made, we're really done with this reiteration, this second telling of the description of the tabernacle and all the furnishings from Exodus in the mid-20s chapters to now them actually creating them, actually building them. And now we have the garments made. And so now comes the scary part. Now they have to pass inspection. Okay? I know growing up in an elementary school teacher's home, I don't know, I guess schools still do observations. The principal comes in and sits in on the classroom, you know. I know that when my mom knew her observation was coming, she was always a little nervous. Okay? Of course, she'd been teaching longer than the principal had been alive a lot of the time, you know, but she was going to do fine. But I remember also in college, you know, if you go to a private Christian college, you have to do some things that regular colleges don't do, as far as I understand it. And we had to pass a weekly room inspection, okay, there at East Texas Baptist. And they had a calendar on our refrigerator, and you were always responsible for your room. And then there was a rotation. One week I'd be responsible for the kitchen, and then the next week the living room, and the next week the bathroom, and it was just a rotation. And, you know, we'd always scramble because we knew our RA was coming at 6:30 or 7 on that Thursday night. So we'd scramble to get everything picked up and put away because, as you can probably imagine, it wasn't spick and span all week with the 4 of us guys living in there. And there was always that little bit of nervousness, depending on which RA you had, how you would pass that inspection. I remember I got home one night on a Thursday. I wasn't there during the inspection. And my part had an F on it that I had failed. And I had cleaned like no other. You know, I couldn't believe that my RA, his last name was Commander, which is a pretty awesome last name, that Commander had failed me. And so I went down, you know, I had to figure that deal out. So I went down, his first name was Chad. I said, Chad, what's the deal? Why'd I fail inspection? He said, you didn't fail inspection. And he looked at us and I said, no, you had an E, it was excellent, or what, you know, whatever the grading system was. I was like, well, what on earth has an F up there? He said, well, maybe one of your roommates changed it to an F. And so one of my roommates, it wasn't hard to determine which roommate it was about 5'3" and 115 pounds in college. And I swallowed him up pretty quick when I got into the dorm room, and he fessed up pretty quick that it was him. But now we have this inspection for the tabernacle. I know I'm looking at some folks that have been in the military in here. Y'all know about passing inspection, don't you? And from what I understand, in basic especially, you're never going to be good enough. Is that accurate? Is that in y'all's experience? You're never going to be good enough there in basic. Okay? Well, this is inspection, but for the tabernacle that the Lord had commanded Moses to have the Israelites build. So I'm just trying to picture myself as Bezalel or Oholiab, or just somebody that even put the stakes in the ground. You know what I mean? Just if I played any role in this at all, I want this to be right, because we had very specific instructions. Okay? So let's pick it up at inspection time. Verse 32, thus all the work of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting was finished. And the people of Israel did according to all that the Lord had commanded Moses, so they did. Then they brought the tabernacle to Moses, the tent and all its utensils, its hooks, its frames, its bars, its pillars, and its bases, the covering of the tanned ram skins and goat skins, and the veil of the screen, the ark of the testimony with its poles and the mercy seat, the table with all its utensils, and the bread of the presence, the lampstand of pure gold and its lamps with the lamp set and all its utensils, and the oil for the light, the golden altar, the anointing oil, and the fragrant incense, and the screen for the entrance of the tent, the bronze altar and its grating of bronze, its poles, and all its utensils, the basin and its stand, the hangings of the court, its pillars and its bases, and the screen for the gate of the court, its cords and its pegs, and all the utensils for the service of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. Verse 41. The finely worked garments for ministering in the holy place, the holy garments for Aaron the priest, which we just talked about tonight, and the garments of his sons for their service as priests, according to all that the Lord had commanded Moses, so the people of Israel had done all the work. Now here we go, verse 43. And Moses saw all the work, and behold, they had done it, as the Lord had commanded, so had they done it. Then Moses blessed them. All right, and the 2 million Israelites in the wilderness breathed a sigh of relief, right? They had done it just how the Lord had commanded, and Moses blessed them. Here's what it reminds me of. When in Genesis, not that we compare Moses to God, Moses was just a man, but in Genesis, remember when God created the universe, when he stepped back and looked at it, what was it? It was what? It was good. I believe Moses, knowing what God had commanded him to tell the Israelites to build, knew they had done it. And when Moses, the Bible ends here in chapter 39, then Moses blessed them. I think Moses is saying this is good. Moses knew. If you remember back, I don't remember which chapter, and it just popped in my head. I wish I would have looked it up. Remember back when Moses was up on the mountain, there's this idea presented in the book of Exodus that God not only gave these, what we see as like an instruction manual, these very detailed instructions, but he also gave Moses an idea in his mind of what it should look like. Okay? So if you read Exodus 39 tonight, or 38, 37, 36, where it's talking about all these things with these detailed instructions, if I gave you Exodus 39 tonight without a picture, and you couldn't look at a picture, and you had to create this, would you be able to do it just so? It'd be difficult, wouldn't it? I wouldn't be able to. Now, some of y'all are more adept and good at that type of thing than I am. But Moses saw this. He saw what they had built. They had followed the instructions to the T, and Moses blessed them because it was good. Okay? Sigh of relief for them. Yes, sir.
Jump this in. it's very insignificant, but it says that all of Israel made it.
Mm-hmm.
China didn't make none of it.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
reason I said that is because when we was over there, you didn't find nothing that was not made in Israel.
Yeah. Yeah.
There were no made in China, Taiwan, Budapest, nothing.
Mhm.
Everything over there was made in Israel.
Yeah. I think, and honestly, you know, I don't know this for sure. I'm no expert on that, but I think probably a lot of that does stem from this type of idea from way back in their history, where this is a big deal. There are people that are Jewish that are not Orthodox as far as belief system goes, but this is still a big deal to them. Okay, the tabernacle and the time of the wilderness, the freedom from Egypt and all of that, they made it. And when it says all Israel made it, just even think about the materials. I know we've said it every time for the last several weeks, but where'd the materials come from? Egypt. Okay, the Egyptians gave it to them on their way out. Okay, it was kind of like plunder, not in war. It was, at that time, it was before the Egyptians were chasing them again, but the Egyptians gave it to them. And remember when they were taking up the collection for the tabernacle, all this gold, all this linen, all the cloth, this goat skins, the ram skins, all of that stuff. Remember what Moses had to do? He had to tell people, go away, we got too much. Okay, we don't need any more of this. So it really was, I don't know how many hands were in it, making all these things. 2 guys are named especially, but there's certainly more that had a role in it. But if you think about all the people that contributed to it, manual labor, bringing the materials, all of those type of things, this would have been an enormous accomplishment, okay, for these folks that are here in the middle of the desert, wandering around. Remember, they don't have a homeland yet. They're still out there in the Sinai desert, okay? It's just fantastic and amazing. All right, well, we got one more. They're actually going to put it up next week, and we'll be done with Exodus after that. Okay, it's been good to go through the book. Sometimes it's hard. These Old Testament books, you gotta persevere, but it's a good thing. These things are in the Word of God for a reason, and we don't want to skip over them for sure. Okay. Well, tonight let's take some prayer requests and make sure we pray before we get out of here. And